The Zion situation has taken yet another turn in New Orleans, and unfortunately, it is a familiar one. He is once again hurt, his second semi-major injury of the year, and once again, it is clear that this is just never going to happen for this guy. And for New Orleans, they've continued to be optimistic over the years for one of two reasons. One, because they actually think that he could get back to the guy that he has been when he's healthy. The first fully healthy Zion season that we got, he played like 70 games and he was an all-NBA caliber player. And if you're the Pelicans, it's hard to give up on that. It's hard to move on from that and just accept, well, he's never going to be that guy again. The other reason they would continue to be optimistic and keep him on the roster is because they just haven't been able to find anybody that's willing to take on the risk of someone that, yes, is still extremely talented, but is continuously hurt and still owed a bunch of money. And it feels like now, maybe not this specific injury, but just this season in general, is the real breaking point for New Orleans. It's definitely the breaking point for me. I've tried to be optimistic about him over the years, and I think the kind of point I've gotten to with Zion is, yes, there are times that he needed to take his conditioning more seriously and he needed to get in better shape in the offseason, all those different things. But there have also been seasons like this year where he was taking things more seriously, he was in really good shape, and then now he's still getting hurt. And so I think I'm at the point now where his body is just not built to play NBA basketball. It's just not. It's not built to play as many games as it to play. It's not built to play at the pace and the speed and the ferocity that the game is played at. And yeah, I'm sure at some point in his career, he'll probably put together a season where he plays 50 or 60 games and it looks really, really good. But I'm just out on being optimistic on that. And I think New Orleans is probably pretty close to being in the same camp. And it's just another thing on top of what has been a disastrous season for New Orleans. As of this recording, they have the worst record in the league. They're 3-20, and they don't have their own first-round pick, which I understand everybody knows, but it's worth pointing out, it's worth noting that this does not happen very often. As a Nets fan, I am way too familiar with this particular feeling of you have some young guys you're excited about, but the team right now is terrible, and you don't even have anything to look forward to in terms of this really great draft class, maybe getting a top 5 pick. That is a scenario that is just really, really tough for a fan base and for an organization, and it could really turn out to be completely franchise altering for New Orleans. Not just the trade, but the Zion situation. The New Orleans Pelicans might not even exist in a couple of years. Like, they might have to be relocated. And I think Zion is a very interesting example of just what's happened to this Pelicans franchise over the last, 5 to 7 years. There's clearly talent, there's upside, there's excitement. And when healthy, when everything's going well, Zion, as well as the Pelicans, look really, really good. The problem is it's too infrequent, and when things go badly, they go really, really badly. And obviously, over the years, the Pelicans have been relatively optimistic about what Zion could be because we know that when he's been healthy and actually played a lot, he can be an all-NBA caliber guy, and it's hard to give up on that even with the frustrations of the injury issues. So that's one reason to be optimistic. The other reason would be, in terms of keeping him on the roster, is just they can't find anybody to trade for the guy. They probably have tried and looked around the league, and teams are just not willing to give up a ton in exchange for a guy that is this hurt and this expensive. But I think we're at the point now where New Orleans, rather than trying to just get value out of Zion, I think they'd be willing to just move on from him and focus on Jeremiah Fears and focus on Derek Queen and Trey Murphy and some of these other guys. And this is obviously a new front office group that has been brought in. And I think I could see a scenario where they're just trying to dump Zion to anyone. The problem is you have to find a team that actually wants Zion. And almost instinctively, two teams came to mind when I was looking up Zion trades. Obviously, you have to find a team that's willing to take on the risk, that has some contracts to trade, that isn't trading for Zion as like a quote-unquote win-now move because you don't know what you're going to get in terms of overall durability. And I came up with two teams. The Chicago Bulls, the suddenly very disappointing Chicago Bulls, after a really, really good start to the season, they've been bad. They're one of the worst teams in the conference over the last 15 or so games. And bringing in Zion would kind of do two things for them. One, consolidate some of their contracts. Like, they have some like nothing contracts on their books. And for a team that's probably going to take another 2 years to kind of be whatever they're going to be, if you take on the 2 years of Zion's contract, you have the upside of Zion while consolidating some of these contracts we're going to talk about that like aren't really going to do anything for you over the next couple of seasons. Anyway, and so it's a low risk for them, at least, because Zion's $40-something million contract over the next 2 years is not really going to hinder them all that much. So it's low risk, but high reward if Zion ends up being really, really good and suddenly has this comeback and is healthy. So it would be Zach Collins and Patrick Williams straight up for Zion. That would be the deal. And that sounds atrocious for the Pelicans given the talent of Zion. But again, that's kind of the concept of the whole video. Is like, I think they are just ready to be done. I think they are ready to move on and just not have Zion on the roster. And Zach Collins isn't expiring. Patrick Williams has a couple years left, but the contract isn't like gigantic. It's like $20 million a year, which these days is not that bad. Maybe he can develop into something for you, but you are just out of the Zion business. You don't have to deal with a contract. You don't have to deal with the will he play, will he not play. You focus on your young guys. You got Fears, you got Queen, you got all these other guys, and the Zion of it all is just kind of removed from the situation. So Chicago, I think, is, if you want to talk about any situation being realistic in terms of acquiring Zion, that would be it. The other team that, again, just instinctively came to my mind when thinking about Zion trades was the Sacramento Kings. Because if there's a team out there that's going to make a weird move, a move that maybe doesn't make a ton of sense, a move that is primarily based around getting interest and excitement around the team rather than winning actual basketball games, it would be the Kings. The problem is, unless New Orleans or another team is all that interested in Domantas Sabonis, it becomes a little bit difficult to match contracts. I ended up putting Zach LaVine in this deal to New Orleans, but I'm not sure why New Orleans would want Zach LaVine other than the fact that he actually plays and is good, which is obviously in contrast to Zion, and for a team that clearly saw somewhat of a win now potential for their team this season because they traded away their first round pick this upcoming draft. Maybe Zach LaVine kind of represents that for them, where you bring him into the backcourt and he's good and as a scorer for you as some of these younger guys develop. Or you can maybe find a third team for Zach LaVine and then make some kind of value or some kind of expirings or something ending up going back to New Orleans. But I think these two deals really illustrate exactly where I'm at with the Zion situation and with his value. We've done the will they trade him, will they not trade him thing for the last couple years. And again, I think we are just officially at the point where they'll do anything to just get him off the roster. And it just sucks because Zion, when healthy, it's not like it's all theoretical. Like, we have literally seen this guy play at an all NBA caliber level when he's been healthy. There's no, the upside, the potential. We've literally seen it, and he just can't stay healthy. And it's not even always these like freak injuries or some kind of catastrophic tears his ACL, something like that. It's just, he strained this or pulled his hamstring or this, that, and the other thing. And it just takes so long for him to recover. And again, as I said earlier, I really have just landed on, if there is a modern basketball player that is just not built to deal with the rigors of an NBA schedule, I think that guy is Zion. I think that's just the way that his body is built. And I say all that, and then I think, he is still just 25 years old. Maybe there is something kind of later on in his career. It's not crazy for guys to start taking things more seriously and figure something out. I mean, famously, someone like Steph Curry, although obviously was always in great shape, had ankle injury stuff throughout like the first handful of years of his career, got that figured out, and then became Steph. I'm not saying Zion's going to have like a Steph career arc, but it's just an example of, we do have some history of guys figuring out injury issues. And again, Zion is still just 25 years old. And here I go talking myself back into Zion, even though literally in the intro, I was like, you know what, I'm out. Maybe I'm not out. Maybe he could be something. Maybe he ends up in a situation that is just better for him. Maybe New Orleans was just the worst case scenario. But right now, I'm definitely looking out for a possible Zion trade.